Okay, Harry, so let's start today talking about one of my favorite topics, Mark the Moron Meadows. All right? New texts were released recently showing him ridiculing Trump's election lies, then days after later pressuring Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. So my question to you, how big a role do you believe Meadows will play in a Trump 2020 election indictment? I mean, what do you think that he knows, and how badly do you think that it can hurt the former president?
Really big topic. And do you think, Michael, he's Mark Moron Matthews? I think of Meadows. I think of him as Mark Mystery Man Meadows. To get to your question, he's everywhere. He is the number one witness, to my mind, of January 6th. These recent tweets show him playing as he did. He is like the worst chief of staff of all time. Not only does he never say no, he plays both sides and he prevaricates. But this is really strong evidence. They have him mocking the notion, and he said, my son looked into it. There's only a couple dead people, and then he actually says to Raffensperger as part of the infamous call, he asserts that in fact there's many more dead people who voted for Georgia, and it's a bald lie. He's been the reason I'm inclined toward Mystery Man is he's had, in contrast to everyone in Trump world, really good representation. He does that first release of the 1,000 or so emails he chooses, and then George Terwilliger, former Deputy Attorney General in the department, pulls him back. They try to get contempt on him, and it doesn't happen. I can see why. I can discuss that if we want to. But I thought the biggest indication of that this case was coming and was going to be big was when we learned he had testified in the grand jury. So it's a dramatic question. Did Terwilliger actually engineer a deal where Meadows doesn't get charged, or is it all a smaller charge? But in any event, he testified in the grand jury, and this isn't like January 6th committee. He had to answer everything. They did a full forensic on him, and he knows everything. He could have convenient gaps in memory or try to cushion things a bit, but he is right there. And it also, by the way, with all the members of Congress who so far haven't figured in. So to my mind, he figures in really big. He's a co-conspirator, and whether or not he'll be named is a big question. But nobody knows more. Nobody can bury Trump deeper than Mark Meadows. Just one little point. Remember, he says to at the meeting about Pence, is it to Cassie? He said, you heard him. He thinks he should be hanged. He thinks it's the right thing. Meadows knows all, so far has told nothing except to the grand jury. That's going to be the most powerful stuff, I think, in the indictment when it comes out imminently.
Yeah, so I call him the moron simply because 2,319 text messages, all right, were obtained. Now, you appropriately stated that that's not all that exists. That's just what he selectively provided to the panel. But even these 2,319 text messages really go to show you, calling him a moron, I think, is the understatement of the day. It's more like a fucking moron, if you think about it. Listen to some of these minute-by-minute timelines of these notable text messages that Meadows sent out and received on January 5th and January 6th. He sends them to associates, Republican members of Congress. He sends it to Don Jr. He sends it to Sean Hannity. I mean, this is fucking stupid, especially when
because he's creating a record, you mean?
Correct.
That's what makes it, okay.
Correct. And worse than just creating a record, he had to understand that what was going on was absolutely illegal, unconstitutional, un-American, right? So if you want to just fuck up the rest of your life, Do what Michael Cohen did. Why don't you just stand by the side, go shoulder to shoulder with Donald Trump? Because one thing I promise him, the same thing that I said to Walter Nader, the same thing that I've said to everyone across the board, Donald Trump, including his own kids, will throw your ass under the bus on any given Monday and twice on Sunday, right? Any day of the week to protect himself. So here you have Marjorie Toilet Green to Mark the Moron Meadows, 2:30 in the afternoon. And by the way, every single one of them acknowledged that Donald could have stopped the violence at any point in time, but chose not to. So she turns around and she writes, last night, Senator Graham told me that I found 100 names of dead voters in Georgia that he would object. I have 100 dead voter names. 2 exclamation marks. So she then, I guess he doesn't respond, so she writes, tell President Trump. And Meadows writes to Toilet, send them to him. So then Meadows then sends to her again, do you have Senator Graham's contact? Now I'm scratching my head. Are you really going to tell me that Mark Meadows doesn't have Lindsey Graham's that he doesn't have Lindsey Graham's contact information? I mean, for real? I think I have Lindsey Graham's contact information, right? And then Toilet turns around and says, I do. So then she then says to Meadows, his cell. Not sure. Meadows then says, yes. So then it's now between Sean Hannity to Mark Meadows. I'm very worried about the next 48 hours. By the way, how the hell and why is Sean Hannity involved? He is a Fox News host. Plain and simple. Why is he involved in this in the first place? And then Hannity then again says to Meadows, Pence pressure, White House counsel will leave. How does he have this information before anybody else? I'm not really sure. So then Hannity says to Meadows, sorry, I can't talk right now. So now Meadows is obviously reaching out to Hannity. And why can't he talk right now? He tells him, I'm on with the boss, referring to Donald Trump. So instead of Trump talking to Meadows, he's talking to Sean fucking Hannity.
All right, so let me make basically, Mike, I'm with you here, and Meadows is everywhere at all given times. I just want to make a couple reinforcing points. First, there are people in Trump world, Walt Nauta might be the best example, who just want to go down with him because that's their bed. They were in Trump world. That was their only ticket to some kind of power or whatever. Mark Meadows is not that guy. He's the paradigm of someone who wants a future, even if it's only as a well-paid lobbyist. So he's somebody who, would come apart from Trump with pressure, which was applied. That's point one. Point two is, man, everybody. Well, here's point 1A. Everybody is, including Ivanka, Don Jr., are reaching out to Meadows, so they can't. He is the one that everybody knows is right next to Trump's shoulder and ear on January 6th, and what a place to be. And I'm sure Jack Smith's prosecutor walked him through minute by minute. What did he say? And then third, he really is the guy. What you just gave, the example of what Hannity and Marjorie Taylor Greene, he gets himself, I think, in big trouble, and he's just a terrible chief of staff because he just tries to placate everyone. People call and say, well, you got to make him stop. Oh, we're trying. People call and say, oh, I've got these names. Oh, great, send them along. So he's a suck up at the same time as a kind of coward. I'll go with those words. Unfortunately, they don't start with M. We could probably think of it. Mendicant, nah, whatever. But and I don't know if he's a moron, but I know he's in a world of hurt. And to me, I've said this for months, the most interesting kind of prosecutorial strategic decision: do you give him immunity? Terwilliger is a very good lawyer and playing it for all it's worth, and he would make that play. But normally, I think Meadows is second only to Trump in culpability and facilitating his knowing all about and facilitating his illegal plans. And normally that guy would be too high up, in my view, to get immunity as opposed to some kind of sweetheart deal. But we'll see. A really interesting thing that's happening right now is Donald Trump's received a target letter. We don't know about anybody else who has. It's a conspiracy. That means he couldn't act alone, which you know better than anyone. He can't act alone to get a Diet Coke. Right. But how's it going to play? Will it be possibly just USA versus Trump and persons known and unknown to the grand jury? Will they be named? So how will the co-conspirators come in? But to me, co-conspirator number one, Mark Meadows.
Yeah, so I'm maybe not so sure.
Maybe Rudy
Yeah, Giuliani. So I wanted to add a few more. I believe that Donald Trump is responsible, as probably everyone that's listening to this podcast. However, I don't think that there's a number two. I don't think it's one person who's a number two. I think Rudy Colludi, drunken Giuliani. I think Bernie Kerik, Jason Miller, Mark Meadows, of course, is part of that group. Bill Stepien, Hope Hicks, Dan Scavino, Ivanka Trump, Jared Kushner,
they're
Don
all tied
Jr.,
for two in
Eric.
They all
are.
And tell me about Kerik, who's figuring in so much now.
Well, we're gonna get to Kerik.
All right,
in
I'm
a
sorry.
minute,
go ahead.
Right,
yeah, it's your show. It's your show.
Because so I appreciate that, but you brought up something that I want to talk about, and that's obviously additional charges that will be brought against Trump, because there's a lot of expectation right now that Trump will be charged this week. Harry, in your professional opinion, do you believe that this will be the end of it in terms of federal indictments, or do you foresee more charges in terms of superseding indictments? And if so, what do you think those charges would be? And maybe against who?
Yeah, really good question. I foresee more. In general, Trump has one escape route if he manages to, either he or a Republican becomes elected and they tell him to stand down. But otherwise, I think the department is going to the end of the line on this, the most important case they've ever prosecuted. So when you say additional, we first have to see what is in there. Are there, for example, other people charged with Trump? But Trump's not going to be the only one who's charged. I just don't see how that can be if you're really, committed to a comprehensive working of this entire case. I would put Giuliani in the crosshairs, Meadows in the crosshairs, Jeff Clark in the crosshairs, and that's just for starters. And then, there are, we know he's looked into, we hear all these things. Oh, he's looked into this, looked into that. It doesn't seem to fit with the immediate thing he's doing. That's right, because he's gathering a lot of evidence. So fundraising, we know Smith has really been into, but it doesn't look like it's going to be part of this indictment. Will the DOJ story factor in? I think generally speaking, Michael, the six kind of plots that the January 6th committee spun out, as well as the seventh that is Smith's contribution of fundraising, are all gonna be pushed to the end. It's not just a matter of one and done with Trump, because they're committed now to this notion that Trump is to be treated like others. And in a case of this enormity, you wouldn't just stop. You would have worked your way up. This is part of the huge criticism DOJ has faced for going too slow and not go. But in any event, there we have the all the president's man aspect of this, as we did with Watergate, which was a really important part of the kind of national reckoning. That's got to happen here, I think, also. And then with Trump himself, you can imagine just whatever comes out this week or soon being itself superseded as against Trump, just to sort of add people, I'd say. I think they've settled on the basic charges here, and in particular settled on not bringing a specific insurrection charge of the sort that some people were anticipating. Not among them, but I think these are the charges you'll see against Trump. And if it's a superseding, it'll be to add other people. So,
personally, and I know this is going to sound a little bit off key for me.
Yeah.
I do not want to see more superseding indictments against additional people and so on. I really don't. And I'm going to tell you the reason why. You
have a sense of the national interest here, I think, right?
Yeah. Look, do I think that Giuliani is guilty? Absolutely. And again, it's my opinion. Bernie Kerik? Absolutely. Ivanka and Jared? Absolutely. But I also think that they're government informants. The reason I don't want to see the Hope Hicks, the Dan Scavinos, the Mark Meadows with superseding indictments, because it plays right into the hands of Donald J. Trump. And that's his playbook. Delay, delay, delay. If there are superseding indictments,
let me make an important interjection. One important, which is I'm talking about longitudinal 2028, et cetera. I'm not talking about pre-2024. So he'll either won or lost. But I'm saying that's how it'll play out. He might be superseded before. I'm just saying, this is a long-term proposition.
See, my hope is that one of these cases, and I say it all the time, I believe the Alvin Bragg case is going to be the one that nails Trump right in those nuts, right? It's going to be a steel-tip boot right to the nutsack for Donald, all right, with Alvin Bragg case. I know the documents, I know the testimony clearly, and I know exactly what's going on there. And, it's more than just me. And I can tell you certain that it's not a difficult case to prove. Unlike January 6th, I thought, unlike with Georgia, right, where he's going to claim, they stole 11,780 votes from us. So I wanted them back. And I'm not pressuring anybody. If I was going to pressure somebody, I would have gotten onto Air Force One and gone to Georgia and seen him personally. And like I did with Hillary, I stood over her back with my gigantic, massive, fat-ass body, right? And I would drip orange shit from my face onto, into his coffee. I mean, that's what Trump will turn around and say. But the answer is no. No. He's going to turn around and he's fooled himself now. That's the difference. That's a sociopath. He's lied to himself so many times about it that it's easy for him that he'll just turn around. I bet even on a lie detector test, he would say, right? Because he's convinced himself.
That's, I guess, the definition of a sociopath. But Michael, back to you. So, let's say Bragg is righteous and is convicted. It's not a big hit under New York law, right? Or do you see what do you kind of?
I don't know. By the way, if it's 1 to 3 years, who right now wouldn't be happy to see that? Because that would be sort of the impetus for everybody else.
Be a non-custodial sentence, I think. Well, I don't know. It's a good point. And there are some people from New York who say when the reckoning's all said and done. Okay, so fair enough. Sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my hope is just that we stop with the delays, because the delays are what's destroying this country right now. It's what's giving Donald oxygen to breathe this bullshit, presidential run, this grifting that he's so good at doing.
It's actually his campaign platform. I'm being indicted and I'm retribution for you. But look, on the delay point, then I think you should be happy about what's coming soon, because it depends who they draw in DC. But I see it as going before everyone, with the possible exception of Bragg. So,
agreed with you. So let me ask you this then. As someone who knows what goes into prosecuting and defending a federal indictment, what do you think, Harry, it'll be like when both these cases actually go to trial next year against the backdrop of the GOP primaries? Remember, the Bragg case, even though it's state, is March of 2024. And then I believe Eileen Cannon, it's July of 2024. So just as soon as he's finished.
She said May, but who knows when it'll be. Yeah.
Okay, let's even say May. So, right after they finish with the Bragg case and he gets beaten up there, It's almost like putting a boxer after a 12-rounder, right? Where both sides aren't walking out looking to clean, right? A good full 12-round fight. Now he's starting all over again with no time to recoup.
I think that's a great analogy, by the way. Let me tell you how to work as a prosecutor.
No, well, that's because I was watching Rocky the other day.
Oh, okay.
Well, actually, let me rephrase that.
Rocky,
it wasn't Rocky. It wasn't Rocky.
Rocky's 15 rounds.
It was Creed.
Yeah, but no, but
well,
Rocky,
those were the old days.
They changed to 12 rounds a little later. I think I'm the youngest person. This is apropos of nothing to have seen the Lee Frazier fight in person. That's for another day, and when you take me to your great restaurant in New York. Okay, so you were just talking about all the things he'll say. Axiom number one for the trial: Donald Trump will not testify. Donald Trump cannot testify, and there are certain things that he wants to make for his defense that only he really can put in, because as to other people, they are hearsay. We don't have to too much bore your listeners, but they don't come in if he tries to introduce them. However, they do come in if the government tries. So what's it going to be like? At least the DOJ ones. I'm worried that Fani Willis will not be like this, and it'll be a whole trip upriver. And I'm not sure about Bragg, but it will be a shock and awe, boom, 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 clean, fast presentation with, just greatest hits, and dispense with everything else by Jack Smith's team for either. Certainly that'll be true of the documents if and when they get to them, though, asterisk there. And I think even this as well, though we'll know better when we see the indictment. And basically, by the way, Trump has to attend. It'll be a constitutional requirement. He can't be on the hustings, so he'll attend all the time and then maybe come out at the end of the day and have a press conference. And then his defense case will be like a day and a half. And jury deliberations, at least in D.C., I mean, we can talk about, will there be a holdout? But that's what it'll look like. It'll be really sort of streamlined and just boom, 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 seismic, and he'll have nothing. That's what it'll be. And, is there a chance that some dishonest juror who doesn't follow his or her pledge gets through and there's a hung jury? Yeah. And would Trump play that as a victory? Yeah. And would the DOJ retry him? Yeah. Even though now it's against the timeline, but that's what it will look like. How does it play against? I mean, I think we know already how it plays. It seems to me much smarter people than I say that by the time the first trial happens, we'll have had Super Tuesday and he'll already be effectively the nominee. And then the question becomes, how does it play in the general election with Biden? I'm an optimist, and it just seems to me that more and more, his comparative look with Biden erodes. And everybody, it's just the nature of polls and our cynical society. If you ask, do you like Biden? Everyone says no. Do you like, but that the comparison will look a little bit better and a little bit better because, Trump is getting judged of pretty serious stuff, and he already starts in the hole. So to me, we're talking about the general election, and we're talking about, little by little, a race opening up to Biden's advantage. That last part is just me, as a total amateur. I don't really know crap about it, but it makes sense to me that's how it would go.
So Harry, you think there's a 0% chance that Trump takes the stand? 0?
Yes.
Do you think?
I've said this before, and I on MSN they say, well, 0. There's a 0, but yeah, I'm going. Axiom number one that I've coined is Trump will not testify. So let me translate into 0.5%. But for purposes of punditry, I'm willing to, draw the line at. How about this?
The reason,
fucking way. Is that zero to you or 0.01? I don't know.
No,
but
that's
he can talk
to...
about a bloodbath. Oh my God.
So let's not forget, though, that Trump did appear for depositions, right, when it came to the E. Jean Carroll case, right? And everybody, of course, said the same thing, that there's no way that he's going to be able to testify. And I bring that to your attention because in the lawsuit,
well, go ahead. Yeah.
In the lawsuit that he filed against me in Southern District of Miami for $500 million, that fraudulent, ridiculous case, he now is going to have to be deposed. Right. The court is mandating that he be deposed within the next 45 days. And so I don't know how then he can sit for a deposition in this specific case where he's opening himself up to everything. And trust me, my lawyers, Danya Perry, Ben Brodsky, they're going to take him and his asshole attorney to pieces. But putting all that aside, why would he be able to sit for a deposition in that case, but not sit for a criminal, right, for this trial, considering they both carry the same penalties of perjury?
Because it's a civil case. So if he invoke, the only thing he can do is invoke the Fifth Amendment, and in a civil case, you can use that against him and tell the jury at every turn, this shows this shows that, this shows the third thing. In a criminal case, where, by the way, a big white collar mob case, the sort of standing assumption is the defendant doesn't testify. He'll have the choice at the end of the government's case to try to argue beyond a reasonable, that there's a reasonable doubt, or take the stand and eliminate everything, because at that point, he gets totally eviscerated on, and he has to answer questions that he wouldn't otherwise have to answer. In a civil case, he's got to either answer or invoke, and the judge will instruct a jury if they may draw no adverse inference from Trump's not taking the stand in a criminal. Of course they do, but they'll be instructed. But with you, it'll be the opposite. You may argue, your guys will argue to the jury if he invokes the Fifth. You can assume that here's why he did it, he's guilty, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like, the worst of both worlds for him in a civil case.
But in that case, Harry, he's the plaintiff. I'm the defendant. I mean, whoever heard of a plaintiff wanting to take the Fifth in their own case? I mean, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense.
That's right.
So,
a lot of things don't make a lot of sense in Trump world, as you knew before all of us. But yeah.
Oh, that was part of the strength of his ability to grift. But let me ask you this. Do you foresee the GOP attempting to impeach Biden on some, let's just say, ridiculous set of charges for the sole purpose of throwing smoke against Trump's indictments? You see that happening?
Yeah, I don't know if that would be the sole purpose. So look, it seems to me McCarthy is a totally weak speaker, hanging on by his fingernails. They've already had an impeachment resolution introduced, I think, by Boebert. There are people who want to do it. I mean, we saw yesterday hearings with all kinds of crap, and this is something I've studied, about Hunter Biden that has nothing to do with Joseph Biden. So, when the first impeachment came up, I was a little scared to be too vulgar. I don't even want to use this phrase, but it involves a dog. And the answer to the riddle is because they can. So the reason it's a little hard to predict, but it's very plausible, is because McCarthy is so weak. And if the mad frothing group on the right have it's either his job or his agreeing to do it, then he's going to agree. Except what he would do, there'd still be a couple little steps. I think what he would agree to do is some kind of investigation about whether we should give some opportunity for a safety valve for things to cool off. It's not going to be in their interest to do. But of course, this crowd doesn't act in the Republicans' interest. They act in their personal interest. The Marjorie Taylor, what's her nickname for in Michael Cohen? Because she's a superstar in her own district and can raise a lot of money, etc. So the question is, can he? It's not. There's no issue as there might have been in the past about what's good. Just let me finish one point.
Yeah.
There's no issues there might have been in the past for what's to the good of the country, but it's not to the good of the Republican Party. But is McCarthy too weak, even knowing that, to hold them back? So I'll just say it's a little bit of a weaselly response to your question, but it seems quite plausible to me. I'll kind of put it there, but it's so much not in their interest that the question is whether McCarthy will have the stature to just push back on the rabid crowd. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say you can bet your bottom dollar, that Marjorie, toilet is going to try to do something stupid and ridiculous. And yes, you're right.
And want credit for it. Remember that she was all upset.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
Yes. And I mean, she is definitely the belle of the Klan ball. There's no doubt about that. And, the fact that Trump is still, to this day, leading the GOP, the fact that even you believe, and I believe it as well, that he is the presumptive nominee of the GOP, of the Republican Party, despite the fact being twice impeached, indicted twice, soon to be thrice, right?
I forget. Are we on video here? Can people see us?
We are.
Okay, because
I know.
It is.
Don't hurt yourself, Harry. I need you.
Crazy that's where we are in this country now. Stupefying. I just did a podcast on back in 2015. Your name figured in. Was there compromise? What's the real story? And man, 8 years later that we are fighting this battle, and it's an existential battle. It's stupefying and tragic.
And tragic is right. I mean, here we are, sitting there, and we're trying to explain to a whole group of people, to Americans. And I don't care if look, clearly there's something wrong with these people that are backing Trump, that are continuing to donate to this grift campaign of his, where you have a guy who's twice indicted, twice impeached, soon 3 times to be indicted, maybe 4, who was found guilty of sexual assault, who has lost basically every single battle in the court that he has come up against, including, and most importantly, all of the allegations of election fraud. What was it, like 60 legal actions? All of them were dismissed as lacking any legitimate basis to bring them. And yet this guy is the presumptive nominee. It's like, wake up, people. Now, I don't know whether it's your desperate need for white privilege. I don't know whether it's because everyone in the Klan is doing it, so you should do it too. This bullshit about protecting your Second Amendment rights and Biden's coming for your guns, that's all bullshit. I mean, it's like, what is it that he possesses that these people are so enamored with that they cannot extricate themselves from the cult? And when you ask them, folks like David Pakman, I mean, when he goes and he trolls them, and he asks them questions like, is Donald Trump the best president ever in the history of the United States? Absolutely. Could you name one thing that he did that benefited you? Now the country was just in a much better place. That's not an answer. Basically, what shows is that you don't know what you're talking about, so you come up with a genetic overbroad statement in order to prove that the answer that you gave is accurate. And I can't figure out, like you, I'm like, I'd like to punch myself in the head because I'm stupefied.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is something, being on the other side of things. I feel like sometimes, am I being arrogant or elitist or pretentious, that it doesn't seem like normal policy debates where it just seems that on one side is truth, democracy, rule of law, public interest, and on the other are lies, fraud, megalomania. It seems so clear, but 40% of the
Racism,
country.
sexism, misogyny, xenophobia, homophobia, Islamophobia, right?
You know,
Anti-Semitism, it's all there.
okay, but so people, all I'm saying is people are, there's a lot of, I think, historians will still be coming to grips with, as they did for the civil rights era, for Reconstruction, what is the explanation for, and again, his support. He's never had a majority of the country. It's only by the quirks of the electoral college system that he's been able to leverage a minority support into national power. Nevertheless, he has. And this is me trying calmly to reprise my pounding of my head just a moment ago. It's deeply perplexing, but that's all secondary. Whatever it is, whatever going to be, is it just owning the libs? Is it real things about immigration or whatever? It just doesn't matter. It's all so secondary to the existential assault on the rule of law and the constitutional norms. And he's already said if he's elected, he's going to eviscerate, all the norms of, for example, the DOJ separation from the White House, the things he'll do vis-a-vis Russia. It's just, first and foremost, there's such an important job to do to just keep him out of power. And unfortunately, I wouldn't normally think it's a huge existential point that a Republican not win, but given the Republicans in play, if they're going to scuttle an investigation and keep accountability of this most serious transgression by a president in our history, I'd say, then that's begins to be an existential threat as well. So the analysis we'll be doing for decades and decades, but the therapy, the cure, the shock treatment of keeping him the frig out of the White House just has to be a total obsession of patriots.
Yeah, I mean, the second he opened his mouth and he said, "I am your vengeance." Right. That should have scared the shit out of the Republicans that are sending money. That should scare the shit out of every single American. I mean, who knows how far that he will look. He wants to rewrite the Constitution. Can you imagine? While he's at it, why doesn't he rewrite, why doesn't he
of course
rewrite the Bible?
He only got, he can't read. He doesn't know what's in there, but you're right. He wants to, and he's got
the new 10 Commandments.
Right.
He's got a whole new set of 10 Commandments that he thinks should take precedence over, the original 10 Commandments. I mean, that's how narcissistic he is.
Well, yeah, he said, well, how narcissistic, even for him, said the statement last week of, if I'm indicted, basically the country will burn. That, that's like some crazy, messianic kind of sociopathy, isn't it? But he doesn't know from the Constitution, but there are groups around, by the way, kind of a government in exile doing white papers and the like. And if he wins, he's going to claim some kind of mandate. It just goes. I think about Adam Schiff a fair bit. I thought that when Trump first got in, he would have some grown-ups around him. And then I thought after the impeachment, he caught it with his hand in the cookie jar and chastened. And Adam Schiff, and you were on this refrain too, Michael, to be fair, we're saying he's going to do it again and again and again. And son of a bitch, he just got more and more brazen, self-serving, and anti-democratic and here he is, the presumptive nominee. I don't want to do that again. People will think I'm a little nuts, but pretend I did.
I mean, it's crazy. So, we were talking about Bernie Kerik. So
Yeah.
let's jump back into that as a topic for a second.
Yeah, and you thought he's a real
Obviously-
co-conspirator here. But
Yeah,
because-
I have no regard for this guy. But
Yeah, okay.
just for my listeners, so you know, Bernie Kerik is the former New York Police Department commissioner who turned disgraced Trump lackey.
And felon.
Bernie Kerik and felon, that's right, agreed to turn over 2,000 pages of documents relating to his work on behalf of Trump to overturn the results of the 2020 election. So my question to you, Harry, is how significant do you believe that these documents will prove to be in making the government's case?
0 or a little bit more. So what they are, he is the reason he would have been claiming attorney-client privileges because he is dispatched supposedly working for Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, and turning up any kind of rock and finding nothing. And we have a judicial opinion that says he found nothing. And I think the reason Trump wants to, waived attorney-client privilege, if he had it, was that he thinks, one, it will show some kind of methodical search, really looking for the fraud here, and two, that there'll be some self-serving statements in there. But I don't see why the government would want to introduce them, and it's not going to be easy, I think. This gets into arcane like evidence law, but for the defense. But anyway, what they are, we think, is just a whole bunch of went here to Michigan and asked if there was fraud, and there wasn't, or he tries to prevaricate, but a federal judge has found there is nothing there. And Trump has already waived it. What's interesting is whether it's a prelude to Trump's possibly trying to make an advice of counsel defense, which would require him to waive attorney-client privilege. And so that could be part of the reason, because he normally does fight. But I think he wants these out there because they make him look good. That's how it was designed to be, even if nothing big comes up, because there was nothing big there. But the government gets these papers, they have these notes, they have them now. I wouldn't make that part of my case in chief. Why would I? So I think they go to the dustbin probably.
So there's a likely possibility, because I agree with you, that Trump will use this to throw Rudy under the bus. But Rudy ain't going under the bus alone, Bernie. So let me tell you, I mean, you know what it's like inside, as do I. And I'm certain that they're willing to throw your ass under the bus again. The thing I didn't fully understand.
You're talking about Rudy here. Yeah.
Yeah. And Bernie Kerik as well. I wouldn't be shocked if they end up bringing a superseding indictment against both Giuliani and
It is why
Bernie
I
Kerik.
asked you. Kerik is a Trump, lackey. I agree, and but I'm not sure how he figures in the whole nasty, nest of activity. He's a guy going out as a sort of almost pathetic investigator here, searching for the true fraud. I don't know, but maybe I don't see him down the middle. But it's a really good point to always remember. Smith knows so much more than we do for one reason or another. Some witness talks, and then that's the big frenzied story of the news cycle on cable TV that day. But it's like a pebble, and Smith has a mountain, and we'll find out when we see the indictment. And the first thing I'm looking for when I see that indictment is Mark Meadows, either by name or not.
I both.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Since we're talking about Jack Smith, let me ask you this. What's your estimation of Jack Smith using Section 241? That's the criminal statute that's part of the Ku Klux Klan Act that prohibits any conspiracy designed to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him by the Constitution or laws of the United States. Now, some people have called it a brilliant legal move, while others believe that it's a real stretch. What's your opinion on this?
that we don't know yet because we don't know the theory. The number one thing to me, first of all, this was the surprise statute, as it's been called. The other two we expected. And we really want to, the number one thing is that it stands in the stead of, or at least they're not bringing an insurrection charge, which people were speculating they might, and which would, on the one hand, seem to get to the heart of what happened on January 6th, but on the other, for many reasons, be very hard to pin against Trump. So first thing is that I note about 241 is it ain't insurrection. Then is it brilliant? So it just as you say, Michael, it's somebody, and doesn't even have to be under color of law. This was, the Ku Klux Klan totally, beating up on the newly freed citizens. Who took rights from whom? That's what we want to know. And so far, there are theories that go very, very broadly, like, oh, well, it's all of us, 88 million voters, and our votes were diluted, or even very sort of narrow, like the members of Congress. Now, to me, a lot of the theories out there, while they make sense, seem duplicative of the charges that already we know are going to be brought under those other two statutes involving, say, false electors or the pressure campaign against Pence. So in order to judge, we really have to see what is the theory of 241? Does that make it a master stroke? Is it even duplicative? The main point to me is what it isn't, and that we already know exactly what it is. We need to see the indictment for.
So when I said to you before that there's so much shit that's just piling up on Trump's head every single day, state, federal, civil, you name it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
E. Jean Carroll, right? That January trial is going to hold. It's going to be a massacre, right?
It's going to be another. Yeah. It'll be another shit show.
Yeah.
Right. So let's discuss for a second the looming charges in Georgia, Fulton County, right, where DA Fani Willis is signaling right now that she could bring charges as early as next week. Now, in all fairness, we've been hearing that for months now, on what would be a sweeping racketeering charge using Georgia's broad RICO statute. Now, the case will likely rest on Trump's attempt to pressure Brad Raffensperger and Sidney release the Kraken Powell's team of plumbers breaking into Dominion software. Do you believe, Harry, that there is a strong case here? And how do you think that the state charges will impact the federal charges?
Really compelling questions. I'll start with the first. I don't know, because I think it depends how things are charged. The core case, the December 2nd call with Raffensperger, audio tape, the wet dream of prosecutors. I shouldn't put it that way. But
that's what it is.
It's too late. But great small case. She's, however, bringing an enormous case, and it goes well outside of Georgia, it would appear, because that's what it'll be to try to prove that not just that Trump and company messed with the election, but that they were actually a criminal enterprise. To me, it's the kind of case, as I got more experienced as a prosecutor, I got more and more adamant about winnowing down, simplifying, taking low-hanging fruit, and she's got the whole friggin' jungle. So I'm just worried that it will be sprawling, caught up in all kinds of motions, and the really core behavior that's so strong, it will be a while until it's done. And because this is, as you and others have noted, it's an important part of the overall arsenal that the country brings against Trump, because there's no possibility of a pardon. And even, by the way, under Georgia law, some people have said, what if the Republican governor pardons? But a nice little point for people to know is it doesn't work that way in Georgia. There's a nonpartisan board, and so if those charges and they can be serious under Georgia law. We've talked briefly about what would the sentence be for New York. So I think there's a strong case there. But from what we learned with the special grand jury report, which, by the way, he gets beat up every single day. Just today, he lost the motion to have that special grand jury report uncovered. There's, I think, a big way and a small way, and it seems to I'm be concerned that this could go for like over a year in pretrial litigation and then be a 3-month trial. Whereas what I'd really like to see is a really clean conspiracy to interfere with the election with the very solid evidence that they have. So that, again, will await the indictment. But from the things they say, her instinct, and she's done it before, she knows from state RICO, but her instinct of going really broad at least conflicts with my instinct as a prosecutor. And you can see a scenario where it all just kind of ends in nothing.
Let me ask you this then, because it appears that Jack Smith is honing in on what happened as well in Arizona with their slate of these fake electors and the pressure campaign against Governor Doug Ducey, who is now cooperating to build a larger case against Trump. So if you would, can you unpack for my listeners how that will play into the larger strategy and what will likely come out as evidence?
Happy to. And you know who else is pursuing it? The Arizona authorities, as Michigan just did, as Georgia is doing. So first, important accountability in its own right. These jackasses at the time were thinking they were just playing politics, lying to the archives, lying to Congress, and saying, "Oh, we're the actual electors." So the state authorities, where it should be, are bringing it home. But we do know that Jack Smith has been doing it, especially for there are 9 states involved, but 7 are worse than others, and 2 or 3 are really bad, like Michigan, where they had to actually lie and say we met in the Capitol when they had done nothing of the sort. And what Smith is doing is building it seems to me, we'll know when we see, it could be, by the way, the 241 count, or it could be the 371, the conspiracy against the U.S. But he's taking these state actors. And remember, I was just talking about Mark Meadows, and there are people who want to be beholden to Trump and others who don't. These are people who have futures in their state, who, Donald Trump's not going to make their bones. And so they're very good cooperating witnesses. And Smith, I think, is about now getting a very nice set of conspiracy charges that begin with these false electors, but go to the Oval Office, because he's got evidence. Trump talks directly to somebody in Nevada, and Meadows goes down to Georgia and says these things. This is all part of the false electors, and Trump is in on a phone call with others of them. So the states are doing their own, this accountability for the state actors who lied, but Smith is bringing a conspiracy that begins, well, it doesn't necessarily begin with them, but that includes them and actors up to and clearly including Donald Trump. That's a sweet conspiracy in the mindset of a federal prosecutor, and it starts with people who are really naturals for cooperating witnesses. Remember Rusty Bowers in January 6th, a Trump supporter, but he got up and just told the truth about what Trump had told him. That was compelling evidence. That's the kind of conspiracy case. That's the sort of bottom up part that Smith, I think, is building.
Yeah. And look, I don't see why things are going as slow as they are. Now, I don't mean at all to pick on Jack Smith. I actually think that Jack Smith has moved in an incredibly expeditious manner. Yeah. I'm talking about DOJ, as a whole. I think if Merrick Garland would have moved quick, had Alvin Bragg brought the case a year earlier, we'd be already done with that. I don't understand what the delay is in the Attorney General's case here in New York, despite the fact that is also civil in nature. But I don't understand where all of these delays are coming from. And I want to then sort of draw your, attention to Rudy Colludi, drunken Giuliani. And it blows my mind that this piece of shit hasn't been charged yet in any of the offenses that they're looking at him for these federal indictments. For God's sakes, they raided. I was outside, I was walking on Madison Avenue. And all of a sudden I see a whole bunch of fucking feds and police. The whole street is basically cornered off.
Let's just call them feds and police. Let's stay with feds and police on that one.
And
as a talking fed, let me just say.
So I see a friend of mine walking on the street as well, who happens to live in the building. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Oh, everything all right? What happened?" The feds raided Rudy's apartment. They're walking out with like 20 boxes of shit. And that's now what, 2 years ago? And so, well, you know that if Rudy's hands touched something, and especially touching Donald Trump's shit, you know that there's illegality all over it. So, I mean, I don't understand why he hasn't been charged yet in any of these federal indictments. So my question to you is there a chance that he will flip or that he already has to save himself? Do you think that they offered him something that now, or do you think that they're saving him for later?
All right, so you're saying that you're making a Giuliani point and a general. And the general point is a little bit old news, I think, but I'm identified as sort of hawkish or relatively pro DOJ. And so just I'll just quickly reiterate that, a few points. First, cases take a long time to build generally. Like right now in Pittsburgh is the trial about the Tree of Life massacre in 2018. And, that's just how it happens. In general, it's unclear if they should have gone both top down and bottom up. But there's an argument that they should have. I think it's fair that they went a little bit slower than they could have before Jack Smith. But I really resist, and I'm not saying you're saying this, Michael, but some people are out there. The notion that somehow Garland was, derelict or political or cowardly. So let's put that to that's just we're sort of rehashing.
No, I'm just saying.
But I know I was sort of identified on one side of this. But then, so Giuliani, he can't get Oscar. First of all, he is facing the music at bar things and with, been with different, just the Kerik litigation itself. That concerned him and the total embarrassment he made of himself in a Pennsylvania court. My short answer to you is that he will not escape accountability here. I don't know if an interesting thing in stark contrast to Meadows, it's not clear they need him or want him. What an erratic way next to Trump, the cross-examination of Rudy Giuliani would be, a total bloodbath. And he may be a useless, he's a crazy old dude who I think, I don't say this with any relish, but I actually think he's not, he's going kind of soft or something. He's not quite doesn't have all his marbles, will say anything. He's not a valuable witness, so that's part of it too. But I'm not sure they would have offered him a deal, but I do think his day is coming, and as part of the overall point I've made the long term that the Department of Justice will see this through, it will include retribution for the former U.S. Attorney, America's Mayor, lo, how the mighty have fallen, Giuliani. Not quite as colorful a nickname as you, but remember who he was and what he's become. Talk about a bizarre, turn of events and how he did it to himself. If everything that Trump touches dies, he's
proof positive. Yeah. So let me ask you one last question, because Harry, the hour goes by very quickly when you and I are sitting and bullshitting.
We need a disagreement. Have we had a disagreement? Well, I don't know.
Yes, anyway, one or two. But I want to change gears briefly, and I want to discuss with you Jim the Jerk-Off Jordan's insane campaign as chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, their select subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government. You know, when I heard that he was starting this thing, I was like, okay, great. That's the fucking name of my book, Revenge. How Donald Trump weaponized the United States Department of Justice against his critics. So I was like, oh, great. All the dirty shit that they did to me. Because you talk about, oh, the slowness of Merrick Garland and so on. My fucking case was 48 hours from a Friday to a Monday. So this nonsense about it taking forever doesn't really sit well with me. But when I watch Jimbo's nonsense and the bullshit that he continues to spew, what's your take on what's happening here? Do you think that he's just mentally insane and honestly believes what he's saying? Or do you think that there's something deeper here, more sinister at play, where, you know, he's trying to counter-program against all of the Trump crap, these Trump indictments, by creating this completely false narrative that the FBI and that the DOJ are out to get conservatives?
I'm on the more sinister side. This is neither me as legal expert nor me as political amateur, just me as a guy. He looks to me like a guy who knows he is lying through his teeth with everything he says, and it's all theater, and he's just decided his political ticket is to be a venomous bastard and say thing after thing after thing that he knows is total horseshit. That's who Jim Jordan is to me. That's what this whole effort is. You know, I'm not with the DSM-5 or whatever the news manual be.
That's a psychological disorder.
I don't. But to me, he looks like a knowing liar. There, I said it.
You know how you know that he's lying? When he starts to sort of go Porky Pig on you, right? And they ask him questions. That's all, folks. And it's the truth. And he cannot get a word out because he knows he's lying, and he's trying to find the right words not to be the liar that he is. Listen, Harry, as always, you are great. I appreciate you very, very much. I love the insight. I mean, as a former Fed, and the prosecutor, it's invaluable. I mean, I really wish more people would listen, even though we try to make some fun on these topics. There really is no fun here, as we are on the precipice of losing our sacred democracy. And for some unknown reason, there's 70 million people, and I don't think it's still that number, but even if it's half of that, there's 35 million people that still believe that this piece of shit is the fucking Messiah. And I can't figure it out. And I don't know what people like you, Harry, myself, and so many others have to do to sort of ingrain it into their brains and into their soul that this is not the America that they want.
Well, if nothing else, keeping our shoulder to the wheel. And Michael, thanks. It's always a pleasure to be with you. And I think you're right. It's both fun, but we get some education in there, hopefully, from our particular vantage points. You have a very important one as well. So you sounded the alarm pretty early.
Well, thank you, Harry, and hope to have you back very soon.
Have a good one.